Okay, so welcome to chapter 6. A lot of quadratics here. I'm going to show you how to do this by hand because I'm pretty sure there's going to be several questions on the real test that will be on the non-calculated portion you'll have to do. But I'll also make sure that you can do it on the calculator. So obviously you can just use that shortcut if you're allowed to. All right, so number 1, I keep forgetting I need to turn that silent. Okay, so number 1, 4y squared minus 9y equals -5. I'm going to make up one that's different but similar to this. So I'll say, 2y squared. Let me think of a number here first. Say this is -7, and then we'll say we'll say minus 9y, right? Well, I think I can do that. Let's see. Yeah, I can make that work. Okay, so here, this is the same thing as if these were x's. So if you want to pretend these are x's, that's well fine. It's not going to make a difference. I'm going to leave them y's just so, we're not too confused later on. But for quadratic to be solved, it has to be set up properly. And by that, I mean it has to be everything on one side and then 0 on the other. And that's not the case here because the -7 is on the wrong side. So by adding 7 to both sides, we can move it so that everything is on the left. So this is 2y to the second minus 9y plus 7 equal to 0 now. So now I can solve it. And there's several methods you can use to solve it. You can use factoring, which in this case would be the product and sum method because you've got the 3 terms. So, a times c up here, b down there. A times c, 2 times 7 would be 14. B would be -9. And then you look for two numbers that multiply to 14 and add the -9, which in this case would be -7 and -2. From there, you would take these, convert them to x values, or in this case, y values, to replace the original y value. So you would still have this 2y squared, and you would still have the plus 7 at the end as well. But in between them, you're losing that, and you're replacing it with the 2 that you just picked, -7y minus 2y. And from there, you just factor by grouping. Now, I'm going to let you guys finish that. I've got several videos of factoring if you really want to see more of that. But let me show you. You can also use the quadratic formula. So the quadratic formula is -b plus minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all divided by 2a. So after you'd move that 7 that I had just had, I had, 2y squared minus 9y plus 7, right? So you just plug in your a, which is 2, b, which for me would be -9, and c, which would be 7. So you'd have negative, and then b, which would be a -9, so that'll eventually be a +9, plus minus b squared, so -9 squared, minus 4 times a is 2, times c is 7, all divided by 2 times a is 2. And you would just go through this process of simplifying things down until you got your answer. Okay, now let me show you real quick how you can do this on the calculator. So if you go to program, apps, there is programs for this, but apps is where we're going to go. And you find the Polysimal 2 app, which is the 9th one on this list here for me. There, okay. You're going to use the polynomial root finder. Because we have a polynomial, now this thing will work if you're ever trying to solve for roots or solutions to any polynomial, whether it's a quadratic that's squared or a cubic function that's the 3rd power or the 4th power, etc. Now we have a quadratic, so we have a power of 2. So we're going to keep the order at 2, right? We're going to leave that there. None of the rest of this really matters. You can leave that alone. We're going to hit next. To hit next, we hit the graph button. And now we just type in the a, the b, and the c. So a is, for me at least, it was 2 in my problem. I know your problem is different. Then I had -9y. You can either make this a minus sign, put minus there. I like to leave it at plus and just put negative in this part. So I'll put -9 to indicate -9. What you don't want to do, though, is make both of these negative. put the minus sign and the negative there. That's going to make things wrong. So it's kind of to each their own how they want to do it. I'm just going to leave the plus signs alone and just type in the negative part. And then at the end of it was plus 7 in my problem. So I've got it. Now I'll just hit solve, which is the graph button again. And I've got my answer, 1 and 3.5 as well. So I got those two answers. And that's it. It's right there in the app. It's that easy. So if you ever need to solve it, you can do it that easily. So let's go back, talk about another problem. So number 2 is very similar. So I won't work it out too much, but because you've got all these different methods, but I will remember to help you set it up. So if you have, and I'm going to make mine up a little different, x squared, I don't know, I'm just going to say plus 5x minus 12 equal to x minus, not 3. Let's say it was like 1. Remember, to solve this, you have to first move these terms to that side. So to do that, I'll have to subtract x and add 1. I'll go ahead and do both of those at the same time. So I'll subtract x and they'll add 1. And those will be combined with those like terms. So I'll have x squared minus 4. It's plus 4x because 5 minus 1 is still positive 4. And then negative 12 plus 1 would be negative 11. And so I'd go about solving this. Now mine would be a really big mess. It's not a very... or I just made these numbers up, so it's not going to be a very good answer. But you can solve the exact same way we solved the last one. You can try factoring it. You can try the quadratic formula. Or if you're allowed a calculator, you can use the calculator. Number 3, though, a little bit different. You don't actually have to do too much work. So let me make an example up. Let's say I have x plus 4 squared equals... we'll say 81. So the thing is, I'm trying to solve for x. Now, I've only got one x there. I don't have an x squared plus x. I don't have like multiple x's in this problem. I just have that single x. So to solve this, I'm just going to try and cancel things out, right? So the first thing I'm going to try and cancel out is this squared. So the opposite of squaring something would be to square root it. So I'm going to square root both sides so that I can cancel that out. So that'll leave me with x plus 4 on the left. I've canceled out the squared part, so it's not there anymore. And on the right, I have square root of 81, which is 9. Now, there is a little bit of a trick to this because technically it's positive and negative 9, not just 9. And the reason for that, if we look at the original problem, which had a 2 here, let's cover this up. And let me ask you this question. This is something, right? That's in here in green. Something squared equals 81. And you could probably tell me that 9 squared is 81. But also, negative 9 squared is also 81. So what's inside here in these parentheses can either be equal to 9 or negative 9. And that's exactly what I've written. I've written that the x plus 4 that's inside the parentheses can be either 9 or negative 9. So you've got those two equations to solve. X plus 4 equal to 9 and x plus 4 equal to negative 9. So just solve those equations and you have two different answers and there you go. Okay, number 4, again, make sure you put the terms on the same side. So if you have something like 5x squared equal to, we'll say 20x, then I'm going to move the 20x over. 5x squared minus 20x equal to 0, and then just solve. And in this case, I would actually solve using GCF. I try factoring it, and I can factor it by GCF. So my GCF here, I can divide both of these by 5x, leaving me x minus 4. And then I've got these two things to solve. So I've got 5x equal to 0, and I've got x minus 4 equal to 0. So the left one would be 0, because I'd divide by 5, and x would still be 0. And the right would be x equal to positive 4. So move your term over, and then you can factor this by GCF. You can't use product and sum because product and sum is if you have 3 terms, right? ax squared plus bx plus c. And you can type it in the calculator, but if you type it in the calculator, a is equal to 5, b is equal to negative 20, and then c would be equal to 0. So you'd have to type it in. If you go back to your apps, and well, I got to go back to main, so go back to that. If you go back to your apps and you